So you mentioned we drive to the cliff's edge. We certainly do that in many different kind of dimensions for U.S. policy, and perhaps we're doing that today with digital assets. Seems like we are, and one could describe that a bit as a pendulum. And where do you think we are on
Yeah.
this pendulum of like regulation by enforcement or lack of legislation? And how would you think of that as a mental model?
Yeah. And I think that just also thinking about the perspective of investors in this space, right? When you're investing, you have to think about the market context, right? And when you enter the market, or at least ideally, you want to be able to take advantage of that. And I think right now is really that ideal moment for a variety of reasons. And I'll get back to both of them point, but just that founder, what I'm saying is just it's just significantly than it was 18 months ago. Fewer founders in the space, but incredibly high quality founders, repeat founders. Valuations, of course, are much more attractive today than they were previously. A much more significant focus on real world use cases. One of the major themes in Paris at ECC, the conference, was a tokenization of real world assets. So I think, and then you see like the continued institutional interest, a flurry of ETF applications. And I think anyway, it's just this kind of incredible moment of rebirth. And it's, from my perspective as a venture investor, like the ideal moment to get in. But when we think about that pendulum more broadly swinging, I think we may be at a point where it's swung to its maximum outermost apex. I don't think it's going to swing back super quickly. I think it may just it may just pause there, right? As if there was a magnet that's just like holding it there for a little while. And the reason but I think we may be there is a few reasons. So we've got the court cases we talked about. The SEC is now on its heels. Even if I think these court cases are probably going to be scattershot. There's going to be some wins. There's going to be some losses. It's not going to be the clear path to victory that many hope, but I think it definitely changes the narrative, right? I think the Ripple decision has already changed the narrative, and it's shown that the argument that things that are fine with current regulation just doesn't work. The other thing that's significant is that companies are no longer going to be afraid to fight back, right? You always tried to settle with your regulator, right? I mean, always. Now, I think that's no longer the case with regard to the SEC, and that because it's a more existential fight, right? If you get someone's back up against the wall, they're going to have to fight. And I think that, anyway, that's one kind of factor that I think suggests that maybe we're at the apex. Another is, again, we talked about other countries getting really active in the space, and that does exert pressure, even if it takes a while for the US to feel that. And then you can combine that with kind of the incumbents we talked about continuing to be in the space and kind of this focus on real use cases. I think that's where and then, there's the election cycle. I won't make any predictions on that just because who knows, it's going to be, I think, a really wild year next year. But yeah, I think that's what gives me optimism now is I think I think some high degree of likelihood that we've reached that outermost apex.